Welcome, students. Today we're going to learn about the Western region. The Western region is a beautiful and diverse region of the United States, covering much of the land of the United States, from north in Washington and Montana all the way down south to California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Hawaii, far out in the Pacific Ocean, and Alaska, which is also separate from the other lower 48 states near Canada and Russia. In this picture, Alaska looks pretty small, but in reality, Alaska is very large. It's nearly as big as about a third of the rest of the United States. But the Western region extends from these states here all the way across west to the Pacific Ocean here. Several mountain ranges cover much of the west. The largest mountain range is the Rocky Mountains, which form the eastern edge of the region here. Eastern edge of the region here. The Rockies begin far north in Canada and extend all the way down through Mexico and even down to Central America. Other mountain ranges that run north and south along the Pacific coast, there are many other mountain ranges that run along the Pacific coast. The coast ranges form a long line on the western edge of the United States. These mountains seem to rise out of the Pacific Ocean. They form cliffs in many places along the coast up to Alaska. The highest mountain in the United States, Mount Denali, is part of the Coast Range. Mount Denali in Alaska is 20,320 feet high. There are still some active volcanoes in the region. Volcanic eruptions happen, but not very often. A famous eruption happened in 1980 when Mount St. Helens erupted explosively. The eruption destroyed 215 square miles of forest. It melted ice and snow on the mountain, and it caused landslides and floods. Animals were killed, and some people even lost their lives. The Sierra Nevada Mountains and the Cascade Mountains form a second long line of the west of the Coast Ranges. These two ranges are very different from each other. The Sierra Nevadas was formed when pieces of the Earth's crust collided together and broke apart. Some pieces got pushed upward to form mountains. The rocks at the Cascade Mountains are the remains of ancient magma chambers that fed volcanoes and then eroded away. Several valleys lie in between the Coast Ranges as well. In the Sierra Nevada Mountains and in the Cascade Mountains. Two of these valleys, the Central Valley and the Willamette Valley, are covered with deep, rich soil. Many rivers travel through these two valleys. And the Great Basin lies in the middle of the West region. A basin is a low, bowl-shaped landform that is lower than the land around it. The broad, flat valley of the Great Basin is mostly covered by the Great Basin Desert and the Mojave Desert. The Great Basin Desert is the largest in the United States. Death Valley, part of the Mojave Desert, is the hottest, driest, and lowest place in the United States. Death Valley is 282 feet below sea level, which is a line that says where most oceans are. Obviously, this is not below the sea. This is far from the ocean. But if it were in the sea, it would be 282 feet below the water. That means it's very, very, very low. And that also means it's very, very, very hot. The highest temperature ever recorded in Death Valley was 134 degrees. Believe it or not, the West region also has a rainforest. The rainforest that runs along the Pacific coast from California to Alaska is the largest temperate rainforest in the world. Temperate rainforests are very wet, ancient forests that rarely freeze or get very hot. Temperate rainforests are also close to the ocean. Some of the large old trees, such as the giant redwoods, Sitka spruce, and western hemlock, reach about 300 feet tall and can live up to 500 years. And the Great Salt Lake is one of the largest lakes in the U.S. The Great Salt Lake is about 75 miles long and 35 miles wide, but it is very shallow. Most of the lake's only a few feet deep. Unlike most lakes, the Great Salt Lake is full of very salty water, even saltier than the ocean because several rivers flow into the lake, but no water flows out. When the water evaporates, salt is left behind. The Great Salt Lake is too salty for fish. The only animals that live in the lake are tiny brine shrimp. Although they're small, brine shrimp are also an important food source for millions of birds that live around the lake. Dry and flat areas called salt flats surround the Great Salt Lake. The salt flats were left behind when Lake Bonneville, a big prehistoric lake, dried up thousands of years ago. Now, Alaska and Hawaii are different and apart from the other states, and they're very different from the rest of the states in the region. The northern part of Alaska is tundra, a cold, flat, treeless land that only gets green for a couple months in the summer. Hawaii is made up of 8 main islands. Its islands were made a long time ago by volcanoes that grew up out of the Pacific Ocean, 2 of which are still active today. Now, the western region is home to many products and natural resources. The Columbia River is an important source of power for the western region. Dams on that river help make a lot of electricity. Many businesses use this electricity, and farmers use the water from the river to irrigate their crops. That means they use that water to help their plants grow. Columbia River water irrigates more than 8 million acres of land. Both farmers and business people use the river for transportation, and many goods travel on the Columbia to ports along the Pacific Ocean. And soil is another important resource. In the Central Valley and the Willamette Valley, there are many fruits and vegetable farms. The Central Valley is called America's Fruit and Salad Bowl. More than 150 different fruits and vegetables are grown there. Crops grown in the area include apricots, almonds, strawberries, cabbage, lettuce, tomatoes, grapes, avocado, asparagus, cotton, and corn. Potatoes, green beans, onions, and broccoli are also grown in the valley. Washington is known for its apples, and Washington produces more apples than any other state. Central Valley supplies a lot of the food for the United States and the rest of the world. And the West region is the center of the wood products industry. Wood products include lumber and plywood, cardboard, and paper that we all use every day. Much of the wood used in the United States comes from the West, used to build houses and furniture, and musical instruments, and so much more. And Hawaii is famous for its pineapples. You can also find sugarcane in Hawaii. The plant is grown on plantations. Once it's harvested, it's sent to sugar mills, and that's where the table sugar we use is produced. Bananas and rice and coffee and macadamia nuts are also grown in Hawaii. And in 2019, California reported a total of 27,400 megawatts of solar capacity installed, making up 20% of all the electricity produced in the state. California currently ranks as the highest solar power generating state in the nation, producing enough solar capacity for 7 million homes in the state. And very soon, the western region may be producing even more solar power that may power much of the United States. The Rocky Mountains are a source of many minerals. Deposits of copper, gold, and silver have been found within the mountains. Gold was found in California in 1848. During the gold rush, when people were moving west in search of riches, a small town in Colorado called Leadville was a popular spot for mining gold. The miners found some gold, but it was hard to separate the gold from the sand. Miners found the heavy brown sand they were digging was actually full of silver and lead, and instead of a gold rush, there was a silver boom. More and more people moved to the area in search of silver. Leadville became one of the world's largest silver camps. This here is an example of part of one of those old silver camps in the mountains. Soon the silver boom ended, but Leadville was lucky. Other valuable minerals were found in the area. One is molybdenum. Molybdenum is used in the production of high-strength steel. And steel production in the West is used to manufacture other products. Aircraft are made in Southern California. The state's warm climate makes it perfect for testing airplanes. Aircraft are also made in Seattle, Washington. You also find shipbuilding industries in the Pacific coast. Fishing, boats, tankers, and battleships are made in Washington and Hawaii. The most famous airplane company in the West Coast is called Boeing. Boeing makes most of the airplanes that we fly in the United States. And during the last 20 years, technology industries have started in the West in the area known as Silicon Valley. Silicon is a valuable mineral that's used to make computer parts. There are about 3,000 software companies, probably many more than that even, in many technology companies in the area. There are many research centers in the West, and these resources are owned by the government. They test missiles, aircraft, and weapons, and new technologies. In fact, the internet was invented by the government in California some 50 years ago. These research, and so those are just some of the resources that come from the western region of the United States. So today we're just going to do a little bit of reflection and think a little bit about what we have learned about the western region of the U.S. And we'll continue our exploration of the western region very soon. Can't wait to see your work. Definitely reach out to us if you have any questions, and good luck.